Good morning. Welcome to the spring Wakefield Town Meeting. First order of business is, here's one thing I want to point out. That's the mic to speak, okay? And there are arrows all along there for social distancing, okay? What else do I have down here? I think, Betsy, are we going to lead the Pledge of Allegiance? That'll kick things off. Here we go, Pledge of Allegiance. Oh, I feel like a priest. Oh, you're in, yeah.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do you have the return of service for me?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Okay. From the town clerk's office, the return of service, I, Kevin Lopes, hereby certify that I have posted the annual town election warrant of April 27th, 2021, and the annual town meeting warrant of May 8th, 2021, on April 14th, 2021. Kevin Lopes, Constable. Into the record. We have that, and now we have the esteemed Daniel Sherman, who will provide us with the financial update of the town. Mr. Sherman. Ready?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So on the screen, I'm going to cover a few items for those of our regular town meeting attendees. These will look quite familiar. Just added another year. You can see that our receipts from tax levy continue to increase as a percentage of our total receipts. This has actually been very good news for us because the state has a habit of cutting our aid from time to time. And if you can see in the purple line near the bottom there, state aid was about 20% of our total revenue for the town, but it's dropped down to around 10% today. But your taxes on your real estate and so forth, and other local receipts have made up the difference. The local receipts have been pretty steady at roughly 10% of the total revenue. So hopefully we'll be able to continue this. We hope the state aid will going to increase, particularly when we talk about COVID-19 and the CARES Act and other state aid special for the pandemic. So this graph just shows again the state aid totals in dollars. And you'll note that we're still less than or about equal to the high point back in 2001. So over the last 20 years, we just have not received the kind of aid that we had in the past. It's slowly creeping back to that point, but in terms of today's dollars versus yesterday's dollars, it's way short. In terms of what we have for stabilization fund, this is our reserve fund. The total balance is roughly $3.5 million, and as a percentage of our total budget, it's almost 4%. And our goal is to keep the reserves, and this is one element of reserves, up in the 10% area. Right now it's about 4%, but it has been rising. We've been putting a little money aside for a rainy day fund each year. Our free cash is our other major reserve amount. You can think of this as being our checking account and what we have in that account. And you can see that as a percentage of total budget, it's about 6.5%. When combined with stabilization, we're at the 10% mark that we want to be at. In terms of policy, Finance Committee, Mr. Mayo, and Town Council all have signed on to a 10% policy amount for reserves in case of a downturn. So you think about if the state aid is roughly 10% of our total budget and our reserves at 10%, if state aid would go to zero, we'd still survive, at least for 1 year. After that becomes a problem, but for 1 year we could handle a cut of state aid down to zero. The total balance is about $6.5 million as of July 1. At the last town meeting, we spent about $400,000 of that free cash. So we have that, a lower, roughly $5.9 million available for free cash right now. So for fiscal year '22, we're going to go through all the various budgets, priorities amongst the Finance Committee, Town Council, and Mr. Mayo. Maintaining our buildings, you see a substantial amount of money spent there. Education, of course. Playgrounds, we're still putting some effort into fixing up the playgrounds. Public health now, of course, is a really big element for us, and our infrastructure and public safety all have high priority. So our reserves today are at acceptable level, roughly 10% of the total budget. We have had curtailed some services. For example, the library, as everybody knows, has been closed much of the year over the last 14 months or so. We do have a lot of capital projects on the horizon. Right now, the Capital Committee and the DPW have identified about $50 million that we've spent over the next 5 years. We're not going to do that, but we know that that is on the horizon, and it's something that we have to address over the coming years. Our meals and hotel taxes are below the roughly $1 million that we normally receive for fiscal year 20 and 21. No surprises there at all, but we do expect those to rebound as the pandemic starts to recede and restaurants and hotels start to see more business. On the good news side, our snow and ice overdraft was 0 for this coming year, so 2021 was a very good year in terms of snow and ice removal. We did not have to overspend, and we will have to deal with COVID-19 for the foreseeable future. So the other thing we have on the horizon that sometimes keeps me up at night is we have a $63.4 million of outstanding debt that we've been paying. This is our mortgage that we've adopted and signed on to for a number of different things: public safety, senior center, Galvin, Walton, et cetera. We have, on the retirement side, we have an unfunded liability of about $42.5 million. That number is probably down a bit because that's a 1/120 number, and the retirement fund earned in excess of 12% in 2020, so that's really good news, and knocked a few $1 million off of that. We also have an OPEB. This is other post-employment benefits, primarily medical, for all the retirees and employees of the town, and that unfunded liability is about $66 million. So we have total liabilities, if you will, of $172 million, which represents about 170% of our total budget. So we have got a lot of debt to take care of. On the revenue side, what we're forecasting now is an increase in tax levy of roughly $4.4 million. We expect some new growth, $2.5 million this year, a lot of it due to the power line that's going in. We did see a small increase in state aid, $261,000. Our local receipts, we do expect for '22 a rebound of a roughly $280,000 to $7.3 million. We're going to use free cash, our reserve, if you will, to make up any shortfalls. We also expect to receive some, just short of $1 million from the Light Department in lieu of taxes. Available funds is a whopping $84,000 from reserves that we have set aside for small items. We have $2.5 million coming in on the Galvin for debt exclusion. So total revenues is just over $100 million. So our budget expenses for '21, the current year we're in, is roughly at $98.3 million. Our proposal that we go through today and decide, we're adding up to about $102 million, a total increase of about $4 million or 4.1%. So with the total revenue projection of 101, we have a shortfall right now of about $1.2 million that we're going to tap free cash to cover that. So challenges, we have a lot of challenges coming up. We still have a lot of work to do on our infrastructure. Roads, sidewalks, playgrounds still need some work. We did pass a road bond last year, and so a lot of effort is going to be put in the roads, this summer and going forward. We're still working on stormwater. The public safety building, of course, everybody I think knows that we're now getting into that, and that construction is not going to be too far away. And then the high school, we're still working through the state regarding that project to replace this building. And we've also identified additional capital projects of roughly $43 million from 23 to 26. So those are some of the challenges we've got. We also have opportunities. So the Eversource power line I mentioned is increasing our tax revenue about $1.5 million. That's going to be a large help. Also, our last public safety bond of $591,000 is going away in this year to be replaced by another public safety bond. We do expect monies on the American Rescue Plan Act, and we also have potential for an increase in state aid. Those figures we don't have yet. We have estimates, we have guesstimates, but we don't know the actual amount just yet. COVID-19 is going to affect local receipts, state aid, and we assume that federal and state aid will cover some of the virus-related costs. And finally, on the forecast, one of the things I looked at is, okay, if we have a normal year for increases in revenue and expenses and so forth, what happens? And you'll see under that surplus deficit column, we're tapping our free cash for the next 5 years based on this forecast. And at the end of that 5 year, our free cash will be down to roughly about $1.5 million. And together with stabilization, total will be around 5% of the total budget. So my forecast says we'll be out of policy over the next 3 or 4 years. We'll see if that's realistic as we go forward. But then there's a rebound going, after 2027 and going forward, we'll be able to replenish the free cash. But again, this is something I look at every year, update every year. And so, more to come. We'll see how it goes. I hope I do better than Weathermen. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Sherman, as always. Okay, what we're going to do, which we've started to do recently, is take a lot of the articles that there's no discussion on ever. And so what we've implemented in the past, but I'll explain it again, is what we call a consent agenda. And what that means is we've placed 4 articles in the consent agenda, and we can just vote on them all at one time at the beginning of the meeting, okay? This year, though, it will require a 2/3 vote, and I'll explain that in a minute, okay? So does everybody understand that? We've lumped the ones that nobody gets up and says anything on annually or biannually. And so what we've got here is Article 1. It's for payments in lieu of taxes by the gas and light, okay? Number 6 is indemnifications for injuries, okay? Number 7, eminent domain. Now, the eminent domain always requires a 2/3 vote because it's a taking of property. In this case, it's the easements to convey minor projects when they take land out in front and put pipes up, for instance, water pipes, or take over somebody's land for a temporary basis. And the last one, Article 16, the contract for the library union is going to be indefinitely postponed. That hasn't been finished yet. So I would accept a motion to have to do this in 2 parts, right, Mr. Mullen?
Yes.
Okay. Is there someone who, I need a motion for, to put the consent agenda on the floor? Mr. Mayo.
That the town vote to take the following articles out of order and as part of a consent agenda. Articles 4, 6, 7, and 16. The effective motions of each individual article will be as stated in the recommendation book, with the exception that the motion for Article 16 will be indefinite postponement. And you should have all received a separate sheet when you came in today that explains all of this. Thank you.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion on any of the 4 articles being submitted to a consent agenda? Mr. Watts, is there a speaker out there regarding the consent agenda?
No.
Okay. There being no discussion, all in favor? All opposed? Anyone opposed? Mr. Watts, anyone opposed out there?
Out here.
Okay, so Mr. Mullen, I believe that's unanimous, correct? Okay. Motion carries. All right.
That the town vote to approve the following articles as part of a consent agenda. Articles 4, 6, 7, and 16. The effective motions of each individual article will be as stated in the recommendation book, with the exception that the motion for Article 16, which will be indefinite postponement.
Is there a second? We got a second here. Any discussion? There being no discussion, all in favor?
FinCom.
Pardon? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Sullivan.
Good morning.
Good morning. And we practiced that, and I messed it up.
So I represent the Finance Committee. So for Article 1, the Finance Committee recommends favorable action. Article 4. Item number 2, Article 6, Finance Committee recommends favorable action. And Article 7, item number 3, we also recommend favorable action.
Any further discussion on the consent agenda? I got to check. Mr. Watts, any discussion out in your area?
No.
Okay. There being no discussion, all in favor? All opposed? No one opposed here. Anyone opposed out there, Mr. Watts?
No one opposed here.
Okay, unanimous, Mr. Mullen? Thank you. All right. That carries, so we wiped those out pretty quick, all right. Mr. Mayo, Article 1, that the town vote to raise and appropriate from tax levy a transfer of available funds sums of money as detailed in the following recommendations for the year July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2022, the grand total amounting to $108,916,424. The motion will provide for a breakdown of this amount and the sources thereof in various classifications and described in the recommendation book. Just so, as usual, we break each department down and vote on them separately. Mr. Mayo.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. That the town vote to raise and appropriate from tax levy or transfer from available funds the sums of money as detailed in the following recommendations for the fiscal year July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2022, the grand total amounting to $108,916,424. The motions will provide for the breakdown of this amount and the sources thereof in the various classifications as described in the recommendation book.
Is there a second? Mr. Mayo.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Over my 25-plus years in town government, I have learned that each year brings its own trials, challenges, and opportunities. Certainly, the last year has tested our collective resolve like no other. So again, I must thank all of our wonderful volunteers, elected and appointed members of town committees, our steadfast town employees, especially our first responders who every day put their lives in potential danger to keep all of us safe, and last but not least, the citizens of Wakefield. You were forced to adapt to many situations that you didn't like, and certainly many that we didn't like, but you came through like troopers. That fact is not lost on me or the town council, and we certainly appreciate your support. As we address the COVID-19 emergency, we certainly have to single out the steady and constant vigilance of our Public Health Director, Ruth Clay, and Emergency Management Director, Tom Walsh. Our success as a community in facing this last year is directly attributable to these two superstars, and I do think they deserve a round of applause to break the moderator's rule. As we address the COVID-19 emergency, we certainly have to single out the steady and constant vigilance. Did I just say that? I lost my place. Sorry about that. We also must recognize the constant support, encouragement, and actions of the Town Council and Board of Health. Unfortunately, you receive very little gratitude for all that you do on many different subjects. To my fellow town employees of whatever rank and from whatever department, I'm so proud to work with all of you. No one could ask for a better team. Despite our efforts, however, Wakefield lost 81 of our citizens to COVID or COVID complications. Our thoughts and prayers are with their families, and I ask a moment of silence in their memory. Thank you. As a municipality, the financial impact of COVID was mitigated by the fact that we have a strong fiscal foundation that allowed us to utilize reserves to maintain the services we have all known to expect. The careful forecasting of the Town Council and Finance Committee, the prudent use of federal and state dollars on both the town and the school side, as well as the willingness of this body to accept the fiscal reality of the time and approve budgets that in many cases shortened, albeit temporarily, projects we held near and dear to our hearts. These actions allowed us to weather the storm. Last year was not easy for anyone, and I know that now you're waiting for a pop culture reference from me. I know the moderator is, and I certainly don't want to disappoint him. So I did some searching for some words that could express how we as a community face the challenges thrown upon us. So with the help from my boys, especially Nick Mayo, and to paraphrase Florida Georgia Line's U.S. Stronger, when Wakefield fell down, we got back up. We shook it off when things got tough. When we hit our knees, we called for help because we weren't ever really by ourselves. We leaned on Tom, and we leaned on Ruth, and we leaned on each other. Because in the end, what didn't break us made us stronger. So as we move forward to fiscal year 22, not only stronger, but with a cautious optimism and safe in the knowledge that fiscal year 21 was not as bleak as we feared, we look forward to another influx of federal funds to smooth out the dips and valleys, to replenish our reserves and fund important projects that were delayed. This budget begins that process. We have increased capital to $2 million. You'll recall last year we cut capital to $1 million because of the fiscal reality. But it's important to note that we have many capital needs, as Mr. Sherman just mentioned, and we still technically have not replaced the $1 million we cut last year. We are funding some positions on both the school and town side with federal funds, and will ease those positions into our tax levy. We have increased hours for our public health nurse, as well as social clinicians at our police department. And we really do, again, owe a great debt of gratitude to our police and our first responders. We look forward to upgrading our roads, buildings, and services, as well as exploring all options to help our business community rebound from the pandemic. We continue to fund our OPEB obligations and carefully utilize our debt service fund to improve our infrastructure. And in the interim, we strive to achieve the best balance between the utilization of tax revenue and the retention of prudent level of reserves. So together we have a lot of work to do, and I wish to do that work with you. So again, I wish to thank my department heads, particularly Kevin Gill, our town accountant, John McCarthy, our treasurer, Victor Santinello, our director of assessments, and my administrative assistant, Sherry Dalton, the finance committee, and especially the town council for all of their hard work, support, and dedication. So with that being said, Mr. Moderator, I will move on to the general government portion of the budget. And the motion for that section is that the town raise and appropriate the sum of $2,571,431 for general government, and to provide therefore that the sum of $4,500 be appropriated by transfer from the Wetlands Protection Act filing fees account to the Conservation Commission Personnel Services account, and the sum of $2,566,931 be raised and appropriated from tax levy as stated in the recommendation book.
Is there a second? Mr. Mayo.
Thank you. The general government portion of the town budget provides for the majority of the administrative departments of the town. The total amount recommended for general government is $2,571,431, an increase of $25,588, or roughly 1% from last fiscal year. Although happy to answer any questions, the only real areas of substantive change is in the movement of some contractual services from the assessing department in Articles 11 and 12 that we'll discuss later, and a reduction in the election expense of $24,000, as there's only one election scheduled for fiscal year 22 versus the 3 we had in fiscal year 21. This section of the budget includes the greeters at Town Hall and raises for all clerical personnel. And as I've said many times, our dedicated clerical staff answered the bell every day during the pandemic, servicing the needs of the community, and continue to do so. And my biggest problem was keeping them out of Town Hall in days when we really had lower capacity. They wanted to come in and serve the community. This budget includes the town council, accounting, treasurers, IT, legal, tax collectors, assessors, town clerks, election registration, conservation, finance committee, planning board. All of these are essentially level funded with the exception of contractual and negotiated items. The recommendation for the general government portion of Article 1 is $2,571,431, with $4,500 from available funds and $2,566,431 from the tax levy, as stated in the recommendation book. It is unanimously supported by the Town Council and Finance Committee.
Mr. Sullivan.
The Finance Committee recommends favorable action.
Any discussion under the general government motion under Article 1? Any discussion outside, Mr. Watt? Anybody want to speak?
No.
Okay. There being no discussion, the motion before you is that the town raise and appropriate the sum of $2,571,034 as broken down in the rest of the motion. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Motion carry outside?
Yes.
All right. Mr. Mayo, we are on to protection of persons and property, that the town raise and appropriate from the tax levy the sum of $12,946,076 for the protection of persons and property as stated in the recommendation book. Mr. Mayo.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Moderator. That is the motion. We could take a second.
Okay, second. Yeah, right.
The protection of persons and property section of the budget for FY 2022 has been set at $12,946,076, an increase of $440,648. The police department budget is $6,312,358, an increase of $249,703, or 4.1%. This budget provides for a police force of 47 police officers, including dedicated school resource officers at the Wakefield Memorial High School, Galvin, and Vocational School. And it also includes mission-specific positions which focus on domestic violence, mental health, substance abuse, as well as family-related issues. And actually seeing increases in mental health calls, this budget also increases the hours of the clinician from part-time to full-time. And I'll tell you, if you haven't spent any time with the clinician and hear about what she does, it is worth a phone call or a visit because it really is making a huge difference in the community. Our police department is recognized by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts as an accredited police department. Only 20 or so departments in the state are so distinguished. I believe that not only is the accreditation a testament to the high quality and ideals proffered by the chief and his entire corps of officers, but has also been helpful in obtaining grants as well as adopting best practices for the day-to-day operations designed to better serve the public while reducing the risks of lawsuits. It seems that almost daily I receive letters or calls about how professional and caring our police department is at all levels. We owe a great debt of gratitude to the police chief and his entire staff, particularly during these difficult times. The fire department's budget is $6,057,188, an increase of $215,882, or 3.7%. The increases are in contractual and negotiated areas. I'm happy to say that this budget continues to include the deputy chief, fire prevention officer positions, maintains the Greenwood Fire Station, as well as our continued adoption of best practices by ensuring that an officer is manning every piece of equipment. Also, this budget includes the hiring of 4 new firefighter positions, 100% covered, including benefits, by the Federal SAFER Grant. With the influx of more building in Wakefield, we need to fully man each vehicle for the safety of all. And we are certainly grateful for all the good work that the fire department does. Emergency management is slightly increased, and I got to say this is the best dollar around. We certainly leaned on this department an awful lot in the last fiscal year. The fire alarm, police signals, and traffic lights portion of the section are level funded. The building department is increased by $15,063 due to contractual and negotiated increases. It is no secret that the department is very busy with multiple major projects under construction in town. I, for one, am very impressed with how the building inspector manages these projects and keeps them clean, neat, and safe. This department continues to be a great source of revenue, generating over $500,000 this year in fees, or we project that it will. It's almost there now. And I start my day every morning around 7 a.m. with my visit to the building department. And let me tell you, the phone is already ringing from contractors and homeowners, and it's being answered, setting up appointments and answering questions. They work very hard. The animal inspector and parking clerk budgets reflect the retirement of longtime employee Ken Staish. Ken is sorely missed, and we are exploring collaborating with our neighbors to provide the animal inspector position in a more cost-effective manner. The town council will need to approve any arrangement in this regard. The entire amount requested for protection of persons and property is $12,946,076.
Mr. Sullivan.
Finance Committee recommends favorable action.
Discussion under the protection of persons and property under Article 1. Mr. Watts, anybody want to talk out there?
No.
Okay. There being no discussion, the motion before you is that the town raise and appropriate from the tax levy the sum of $12,946.76 for the protection of persons or property as stated in the recommendation book. All in favor? All opposed? Mr. Watts?
Clear majority.
Clear majority. There we go. All right, Mr. Mayo. Not that I don't like to keep town meeting fresh, but I'll let you read the motion this time under, where are we?
Human Services.
Okay, Human Services. Mr. Mayo.
That the town raise and appropriate from tax levy the sum of $903,626 for human services as stated in the recommendation book.
Is there a second? Mr. Mayo.
The request for human services portion of Article 1 is $903,626, $24,333 more than last fiscal year, or a very scant 2.7%. The requested budget for the Council on Aging is $260,320. And despite the social distancing requirements of the COVID protocol, the Council on Aging, under the direction of our wonderful director, Judy Luciano, continue to provide services to the approximately 5,000 citizens of Wakefield 60 years of age or older. Judy's staff put on socially distanced outdoor activities, visited people in their homes, as well as was instrumental in delivering masks and managing the vaccination clinics. In fact, I think that Judy and her staff contacted every senior in town personally to assist them in navigating the state's website and getting them into clinics, whether it was in Wakefield or Boston or Danvers or wherever. Simply a marvelous job done by our Council on Aging. The Board of Health's budget is recommended at $277,023. I am also most grateful for all the work done by this department and the Board of Health during the pandemic. Without the hard work of Ruth Clay, Coral Hope, Karen Cronin, Catherine Dingra, and of course Cindy Luongo, I don't know where we would be at this as a community right now. We are so fortunate to have them. And as we exit the pandemic, which I'm saying we're exiting, we can see it, we're getting out of it, we will continue, or they will continue to tackle other areas surrounding the health and wellness of the community. This department continues to work on providing walking and bike routes, healthier living, analyzing how to better provide for the mental well-being of all our citizens, and also attacking the opioid problem. They really do a fabulous job. And to that end, this budget does include increasing the public health nurse from 11 to 17 and a half hours a week. And this is, although it's not reflected in our budgets today, very proud of the Board of Health that just received a 3-year grant of $300,000 a year, so that's close to $1 million, to manage health in our whole sector, which includes Wakefield, Melrose, Stoneham, Malden, Medford, and Winchester. So great job by Ruth Clay and her staff to bring even more funds out of the tax levy into this community and help the health of everybody. The recreation budget is increased by $6,746, and I got to say, Dan McGrath and his staff did a great job of managing the Academy program at the Civic Center during the past year, which is the before and after school program for our children, really helping a lot of families provide a place for their children to go. And I got to say, this summer I expect an explosion in activities as we break out of the shackles of this pandemic and utilize the rec department. Great job there. The veteran budget is increased by $3,164 to $249,601. The Veterans Benefits Department administers payments to recipients of hospital and medical benefits, as well as ordinary subsistence benefits. The town is reimbursed up to 75% of these costs by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The collaboration with Melrose and now Saugus has provided a department which is doing much more for our veterans. A special thanks to our Veterans Advisory Board. This board continues to assist in the outreach effort to provide the best possible services for our veterans. And within the next week, drive downtown, you're going to see a nice tribute to some of our veterans. I'm not going to give it away, but it will be up there shortly. The total recommendation for Human Services section of Article 1 is $903,626, all from tax levy.
Mr. Sullivan.
Finance Committee recommends favorable action.
Discussion under the Human Services section of Article 1. Mr. Watts.
No one.
There being no discussion, the motion before you is that the town raise and appropriate from the tax levy the sum of $903,626 for human services. All in favor? All opposed? Mr. Watts?
34.
Majority?
Majority.
Thank you. Motion carries. Next section. Public Works Department, Mr. Mayo.
That the town raise and appropriate the sum of $7,356,335 for public works, and to provide therefore that the sum of $88,796 be appropriated by transfer to the Public Works Personal Services account from the following accounts: perpetual income, $45,595, park trust funds available, $1, sale of lots funds, $43,200, and the sum of $7,267,539 be raised and appropriated from tax levy as stated in the recommendation book.
Is there a second? Second. Mr. Mayo.
The request for the Public Works budget is $7,356,335, an increase of $256,867 over last year. The bulk of the increases are due to contractual obligations, as well as the partial reinstatement of the $110,000 cut last year. In fiscal year 2022, the staffing level for Public Works will include 80 members, including water and sewer staff. However, staffing levels are still short of the 84 employed in the 1990s. The Public Works Department has done an excellent job in preparing their budget and maintaining the town's infrastructure under difficult fiscal constraints. The funding added to this budget is gratefully needed and will go a long way to improving a great community. This is a no-frills budget. It is a budget that provides efficient, effective, and economical services to the community. The DPW's professional approach and dedication has been key to maintaining the core services that they provide. The recommendation for this portion of the budget is that $7,356,335 be appropriated, with $7,267,539 from tax levy and $88,796 from available funds.
Mr. Sullivan.
Finance Committee recommends favorable action.
Any discussion under the Public Works portion of Article 1? Mr. Watts.
No one outside.
Okay. There being no further discussion, no discussion at all, as a matter of fact, the motion before you is that the town raise and appropriate the sum of $7,356,335 for the Public Works as broken down by Mr. Mayo. All in favor? All opposed? Mr. Watts?
Majority 4.
Okay, motion carries for the Public Works Department. Next, enterprise departments, and to provide for that
the town raise and appropriate the sum of $15,259,882 for Public Works enterprise departments, and to provide therefore that the sum of $6,277,749 be appropriated by transfer from the water receipts to the various Water Division budget accounts listed in the recommendation book, and the sum of $8,982,133 be appropriated by transfer from sewer receipts to the various Sewer Division budget accounts as listed in the recommendation book.
Is there a second? Mr. Mayo.
The Water and Sewer Divisions are self-sustaining departments and are not part of the tax levy. These two budgets are well-structured and ensure that we continue to maintain and improve our water and sewer infrastructure, provide safe drinking water to the community. The water budget has increased $210,165. The major increase in the Water Division budget is related to contractual obligations. It is important to note that the MWRA water assessment decreased for fiscal year 2022 by some $35,000. This decrease occurred because our water superintendent changed the pumping hours at the Crystal Pumping Station under the direction of our DPW director, Joe Conway, and we pumped more from Crystal Lake during peak usage. It's a great job by the department and actually lessened our amount of MWRA water that we were using, and that represented a drop in that account there. It's also important to note that the MWRA amount represents 45% of that budget. While we still don't have the final MWRA assessment, and we won't receive that until late June, and that may increase or decrease depending on what they do there. Public Works Department has done an excellent job in minimizing increases in this budget. On the sewer side, the sewer part of the budget has increased scant $20,000 or 0.2%. And this is because the sewer assessment actually decreased by $58,000 or so. And that assessment decreased because, due to COVID, the MWRA deferred many capital expenditures in their system, so we did not have to pay for them last fiscal year. I, for one, think they'll add them this year, so we may see something coming in the future on those. And it's important to note that out of the sewer budget, 76% of that represents what we pay to the MWRA. So again, we will not know the final number there until we get the final assessment, but I'll tell you that our prognosticators over there, Joe Conway and crew, we get a pretty good idea where it's going to be. So both these budgets are well-structured and ensure that we continue to maintain and improve our water sewer infrastructure and provide safe drinking water for the community. And the DPW has done an excellent job in minimizing increases in this budget. So the recommendation for this portion of the budget is that $15,259,882 be appropriated from the respective enterprise divisions, and that is a very modest increase from last year of about 1.5%. Thank you.
Mr. Sullivan.
Finance Committee recommends favorable action.
Any discussion under the Enterprise Departments section of Article 1? Mr. Watts.
No discussion.
No discussion. The motion before you is that the sum of $6,277,749 be appropriated and transferred from the water receipts to the various Water Division budget accounts listed in the recommendations at the sum of $8,982,133 be appropriated for the transfer from sewer receipts to the various Sewer Division budget accounts listed in the recommendation book. All in favor? All opposed? Mr. Watts.
Majority 4.
Majority. Motion carries. Okay. Mr. Mullen, did you write "and to provide therefore that"? Did you write that phrase? I just said "and to provide therefore that." Just wondering. Okay, never mind. A little attempt at humor. All right. Under the school department budget, under Article 1. Oh, no. Yeah, okay. Mr. Lyons, Superintendent Lyons, you are up, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. That the town raise and appropriate the sum of $45,458,200 for the school department, and to provide, therefore, that the sum of $115,000 be appropriated by the transfer to the school department contractual services, bus transportation allocation from the offset receipt, bus transportation user fees, and the sum of $45,343,200 be raised and appropriated from the tax levy. The total recommended for the school department is $45,458,200.
Second? Mr. Lyons.
Thank you. Good morning. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to town meeting this morning. At our fall town meeting, Mr. Mayor reported, after quoting a country song, that better days lie ahead for Wakefield. I'm happy to share at this point in the school year, we are experiencing much better days than we were in the fall, and certainly better days than we were experiencing last year at this time. The majority of our faculty and staff are vaccinated. COVID numbers in the state, in Wakefield, and in our schools are trending in the downward direction, and students are back in school full-time. We have experienced and learned a lot this year. Our teachers have had to reinvent themselves and relearn how to teach in a remote setting while students are in quarantine and while students are also in hybrid schedules. Students have been remarkable as they have learned to manage their time, their academic commitments, in weeks that have included in-person instruction, synchronous and asynchronous teaching and learning. In the past year, we have had students absolutely thrive and improve, while many others have had difficulty staying on track and connected to school, as well as connected to friends. For many, the pandemic has caused isolation and increased anxiety. The first priority as we return in the fall is to ensure that we are reestablishing relationships and continuing to assess student wellness and social emotional health while also assessing and engaging students academically. When we return, we welcome back more than 400 students that have been learning remotely and others that have transferred to private and homeschool programs. The budget that we are proposing allows us to continue to get back on track with our instructional strategy, district and school goals that allow us to focus on supporting students' social, emotional, and behavioral health, special education, facilities improvements that include a new high school, and most importantly, structures to meet the individual needs of students. The proposed budget will also allow us to focus on and develop special education services, greater opportunities for counseling and academic support before and after school, as well as opportunities for acceleration and individualized support. We are prepared and planning for a full opening in the fall. This will include a full return of transportation, before and after school programming through Wakefield Academy, as well as the return of fall sports and extracurricular activities. We know that as we make all of these plans, we will need to be flexible in our thinking and adapt to whatever comes. In closing, I would like to thank our school committee, our past school committee that we've spent a year with working during COVID, and our newly elected members of school committee. I'd also like to thank our teachers, our students, and our administrators for their hard work, and we would like to thank families and members of the community for their patience and ongoing support. Thank you.
Mr. Sullivan.
The Finance Committee recommends favorable action.
Any discussion under the school department budget under Article 1? Mr. Watts.
No discussion.
There being no discussion, the motion before you is that the town raise and appropriate the sum of $45,458,200 for the school department as broken down in the Mr. Lyons set forth in his motion. All in favor? All opposed? Mr. Watts?
Majority 4.
Majority. Motion carries. Next up, the library. Mr. Mayo.
That the town raise and appropriate the sum of $1,751,632 for the library department, and to provide therefore that the sum of $49,139 be appropriated by transfer to the library materials and supplies account from the library trust fund income available, and the sum of $1,702,493 be raised and appropriated from the tax levy as stated in the recommendation book.
Is there a second? Mr. Mayo.
Request for the library is $1,751,632. And I am happy to say that our materials and supplies, or the book budget, actually slightly exceeds the state requirement. And the recommendation for the library is $1,751,632.
Mr. Sullivan.
Finance Committee recommends favorable action.
Any discussion on the library? Mr. Watts?
No discussion.
No discussion. Motion before you is that the town raise and appropriate the sum of $1,750,632 for the library department as set forth in the rest of the motion. All in favor? All opposed? Mr. Watts?
Majority 4.
Okay. Motion carries. Education for the nervous.
The vocational school.
I know.
That the town raise and
An acronym.
appropriate the sum of $1,909,388 from the tax levy as stated in the recommendation book.
Is there a second? Mr. Mayo.
This budget represents an increase of $335,115 over last year and is based upon the enrollment of 100 students at the Northeastern Vocational School. This is 18 over this current fiscal year. Also based on 1 student at Minuteman Regional in Lexington and 7 at Essex North Shore Regional in Danvers. And it is important to note that we don't know the exact number until October, really, until school starts and we get the numbers in. But this is what we anticipate, and this is what we've been told. Vocational school has adopted many cost savings measures, including entering the GIC. This amount, however, is contingent upon the state funding Chapter 70 and regional transportation at the currently stated levels. The requested and recommended amount is $1,909,388.
Is there a second? Oh, right, we already got it. Sorry. Mr. Sullivan.
Finance Committee recommends favorable action.
Any discussion on the vote? Mr. Watts.
No discussion.
No discussion. Motion before you is that the town raise and appropriate the sum of $1,909,388 for the vote. All in favor? All opposed? Mr. Watts.
Majority 4.
Pardon me?
Majority 4.
Oh, okay, thank you. Motion carries. Next, are we on unclassified? Mr. Mayo.
That the town raise and appropriate the sum of $2,472,045 for unclassified portion of the budget as stated in the recommendation book, and to provide therefore that $1,920,806 be raised and appropriated from the tax levy, and $551,239 be raised from available funds.
Is there a second? Mr. Mayo.
The unclassified total for the recommended total for the unclassified portion of the budget is $2,472,045, an increase of $135,269 over this current year's budget. And the real increase there is that we did decide to increase the reserve fund, which is money we set aside, by $100,000, and I'll explain a bit later. This budget also, as it did last year, now includes the WCAT operations, and that's per a Department of Revenue ruling, and that portion of the funding is paid by the subscription fees that we all pay on our cable bills. The 2 main reasons for this increase in this budget is the increase in the general insurance portion of the budget and Medicare portion, which is due to the fact of a higher payroll. And Medicare account pays the town's share of the 1.45% of pay per year for anyone hired after April 1st, 1986. Also, since our overall budgets have been increasing, and really to be in compliance with our financial policy, we're recommending increase the reserve fund by $100,000 to $400,000. And this is money that we put aside in the beginning of the year to use if there's any unexpected expenditures or events that happen. It could be last year in June we had a squirrel, or a couple of years ago we had a squirrel wipe out our generator at the police station, and we had to spend $20,000 that we weren't anticipating to repair that. That would go into the account, the reserve fund account. The last time we increased the reserve fund was in 2014, and we increased that from $250,000 to $300,000. So we are trying to keep pace with our budgets. And again, any remaining portions that we don't use in the reserve fund goes back into the general fund, so we just goes back to our free cash. The recommended portion for the unclassified portion of Article 1 is $2,472,045.
Mr. Sullivan.
The Finance Committee recommends favorable action.
Any discussion under the unclassified portion of Article 1? Mr. Watts.
No discussion.
All right, there being no discussion, the motion before you is that the town raise and appropriate the sum of $2,472,045 for the unclassified portion of the budget as stated in the recommendation book. All in favor? All opposed? Mr. Watts.
Majority 4.
Motion carries. Benefits and administration, Mr. Mayo.
That the sum of $18,287,809 be raised and appropriated from tax levy for benefits and administration as stated in the recommendation book.
Is there a second? Second? Anybody? Second, thank you. Mr. Mayo.
The amount requested for benefits administration reflects an increase of $669,219 over last year's budget. The program of benefits provided by the employee's retirement system and the group insurance budget is set by statute with the employee's contribution to the group insurance cost determined by negotiations. The appropriation for the retirement system for fiscal year 2022 is $5,599,427, reflecting an increase of $203,020, or about 3.7% over last year. The appropriation is based on an amortization schedule, and Dan talked about that a little bit in the beginning. This schedule was initiated by the town in 1988 and is updated every 2 years and is scheduled to end in fiscal year 2035. So when Dan is up here in 2035, it's going to say 0. Right, Dan? Where is he? As what we need. The workers' compensation budget requested for fiscal year 2022 is down almost $57,000, and this is a real success story. Our workers' comp budget is based on injuries and what have you, so having less injuries with our personnel has a lot to do with the training provided by department heads at all levels, and is a great savings to the taxpayer. One of our biggest stories and the biggest part of this budget is the health insurance. And in January 2012, the town of Wakefield was one of 4 communities who were able to join the state's Group Insurance Commission. This was only able to occur due to the prompt action of the Board of Selectmen at the time in adopting the change in state law and subsequent agreement with the employees. Due to this change in insurance, the town has saved millions of dollars since 2012. In fact, I went back to 2012. Our cost of insurance was over $14 million in 2012. That did not include any money being put into OPEB, other post-employment benefits. So when you look at the number here today, you can see what a great success story that has been. We're less than we were in 2012, yet putting money away for the future. So this movement to the GIC still continues to pay dividends. I want to thank our Human Resources Department of Amy Forziati and Karen Doucette. They continue to work with all our employees to enroll them in the most cost-effective plans for both the town and the employee. And in fact, to date, this year, they've avoided thousands of dollars in extra fees by talking to employees and getting them to move to less costly plans, which covers all their doctors and hospitals anyway. And also the employees save. We also have an opt-out program where our employees can actually opt out if they can get employment elsewhere, get insurance elsewhere. And we're going to save an estimated $600,000 plus in fiscal year '21 that we otherwise might have to pay. So despite an increase in the overall health insurance costs across the board, we are still way ahead of the game. The recommendation for benefits and administration portion of Article 1 is $18,287,809.
Mr. Sullivan.
The Finance Committee recommends favorable action.
Any discussion on the benefits and administration portion of Article 1? Mr. Watts.
No discussion.
Motion before you that the sum of $18,287,809 be raised and appropriated from the tax levies for benefits and administration. All in favor? All opposed? Mr. Watts.
Majority 4.
Motion carries. Light Department motion. Mr. Mayo.
That the town appropriate the sum of $982,772 from the light operation account to the contributing retirement pension accumulation fund account, and to appropriate the sum of $1,333,477 from the light operation account to the employees group insurance account, and to appropriate the sum of $34,224 from the light operation account to the workers' compensation insurance account, and that the balance of the receipts of the municipal gas and light department from July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2022 be appropriated for the use of the department for other expenditures, provided, however, that if the income from said department shall exceed the expenses of the department for said period of time, the use of the excess in whole or in part shall be determined by the Board of Light Commissioners.
Is there a second? Thank you. Mr. Mayo.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The final portion of this article allows for the orderly transfer of funds from the different accounts within the Wakefield Municipal Gas and Light Department to the town pension, group insurance, workers' comp, and retirement accounts as the Municipal Gas and Light Department employees partake in these programs. And these programs are not funded from the tax levy, but are funded from the receipts of the Light Department.
Mr. Sullivan.
The Finance Committee recommends favorable action.
Discussion under the Light Department motion of Article 1. Mr. Watts.
No discussion.
No discussion. The motion before you that the town appropriate the sum of $982,722 from the light operation account to the contributory retirement pension accumulation fund and appropriate the sum of $1,333,477 from the light operation group as the remainder as broken down in the motion. All in favor? All opposed? Mr. Watts.
Majority 4.
Majority. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and thank you, members of town meeting.
All right. Mr. Frank Leone, Chairman of the Capital Outlay. Mr. Leone. You want to do your motion first? We'll get a second, and then you can do the PowerPoint, okay? All right, great. Thanks. Okay.
Hi, everybody.
Article 2 is a capital outlay. Mr. Leone.
That the town vote to raise and appropriate from tax levy the amount of $1,982,325,019 and the transfer of the amount of $170,000 from the sewer receipts account to the sewer department capital outlay account and the sum of $250,000 from the water receipts account to the water department capital outlay account to carry out the purposes of Article 2 as stated in the recommendation book.
Is there a second? Thank you. Mr. Leone, you have a PowerPoint?
Yes.
Thank you.
Our committee meets in February and March of every year, around 7 or 8 times to review the capital requests of the departments. We've had the same committee for a while now, along with myself, Dan, David, Phil, Tracy, and Jeff was actually new this year. To overview the process, each fall, the town departments submit requests to the Capital Planning Committee for consideration. The requests are compiled into a spreadsheet for evaluation and review. Initially, the tax requests are pretty high. This year it was around $6,590,000, and the water and sewer $250,000 and $170,000. The committee invites all interested department heads to the meeting for discussion upon their requests so we can hear directly from them. We evaluate requests and establish a rank of priority for the funding of these requests. We work to explore all potential options for efficiency and savings to the town. We establish a yearly plan, try to establish a yearly plan to meet the town budget and expenses of around $2 million. We've had the $2 million there for a couple of years now, except for last year, which we had to cut back. To highlight some of the items, the full list is in the booklet today, but to highlight a couple of the items. This year, we were able to get back up to 3 police cruisers. Last year, we had to go down to 1 because of the budget cuts, but we were lucky that we only needed to go back to the 3 this year. $30,000 for a sidewalk snow blower. This will be for the schools, mainly for the Galvin, and to help out at the high school for the big campuses to alleviate some of the snow blowing. And then that big Toro gang mower there, that's the big boy you see doing the common and all the big parks and fields around town. That thing runs pretty much all the time in the summertime. For the buildings, the Hartshorn House needs a roof replacement. That looks a little high, but it's a wood shingle roof, and those are a little more expensive. Boiler replacement at the senior center should take care of that building for a long time to replace 2 of them. Well, we're actually replacing 4 of them. 2 of them will be sufficient to carry the load there. And then some windows at the Greenwood Fire Station. $150,000 to the ADA accessibility plan for the town. $62,500 for fire department portable radios. And then there's $140,000 for a new Woodville school playground. We had that in there last year, but had to cut it. We've been trying to get on our plan every year to do a new playground for the schools. 2 years ago, we had the Greenwood School, and that was completed last year. So this year, hopefully, this will be fine, and we'll get the Woodville, and then we'll keep going until all the parks, all the places at the schools, and then we'll go to the parks. So the total recommendation for the tax levy is $1,982,325.19. Water enterprise, $250,000. Sewer enterprise, $170,000. Thank you.
Mr. Sullivan.
And the Finance Committee recommends favorable action.
Any discussion on the motion under Article 2, capital outlay? Mr. Watts.
No discussion.
No discussion. There being no discussion, the motion before you is that the town vote to raise and appropriate from the tax levy the amount of $1,982,325 and transfer from the amount of $170,000 from the sewer receipt department capital outlay and the sum of $250,000 from the water receipt as stated in the recommendation book. All in favor? All opposed? Mr. Watts.
Majority 4.
Motion carries. Article 3. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate from the tax levy or transfer from available funds a sum of money by the Capital Projects Debt Service Fund, also known as the Debt Service Fund, or to see what the town will do about it. Mr. Mayo.
That the town raise and appropriate from tax levy to the Capital Projects Fund, also known as the Debt Service Fund, the sum of $4,133,698 to carry out the purpose of this article.
Is there a second? Mr. Mayo.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The purpose of this article is to supplement the $1 million that each year is automatically appropriated without town meeting approval for debt service. This $1 million appropriation is authorized by a Massachusetts legislative act. The $4,133,698 requested under this article, along with the automatic $1 million appropriation, is used to fund our debt payment for fiscal year 2022. Included in this figure is $2,481,148 for the debt exclusion for the new Galvin School. The remaining $2,652,550 is the amount necessary to continue the payments on our other bonds. This is a very important program and allowed us to finance a number of projects, including 3 elementary schools, the library, Public Safety Building 1, Public Safety Building 2 is underway, senior center improvements and improvements to the town hall, the new Galvin, and athletic facility improvements at the high school. Now we are nearing the end of many of these projects. The senior center and Woodville School last payments were made last year, and this year, as I said, is the last payment for the public safety building. This article will also help fund the fire trucks that we've purchased in the past few years, the Greenwood roof, which was paid for half by the state, the road bond, and as I said, public safety building number 2. We feel our tax levy appropriations will remain basically steady for the foreseeable future, or could reduce or increase depending on more projects that we take on. Much work has been done on this wonderful financing tool by our town accountant Kevin Gill, our treasurer John McCarthy, and the Finance Committee Forecasting Subcommittee led by Dan Sherman, Gerard Lehman, Doug Butler, and Joanne Riley, and of course the Town Council. The Council recommends favorable action.
Mr. Sullivan.
And the Finance Committee recommends favorable action as well.
Any discussion on the motion under Article 3? Mr. Watts.
No discussion.
No discussion. The motion before you is that the town raise and appropriate from the tax levy the Capital Projects Fund, also known as the Debt Service Fund, the sum of $4,133,698 to carry out the purposes of this article. All in favor? All opposed? Mr. Watts.
Majority 4.
Okay, motion carries. We have already resolved number 4. We are on to 5. To see if the town will raise and appropriate from the tax levy or transfer from available funds, including excess and deficiency account, a sum of money to supplement the appropriations of all budgets for the period July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021, or to see what the town will do about it. Mr. Mayo.
That the town appropriate from free cash the sum of $309,320 to carry out the purpose of this article.
Is there a second? Mr. Mayo.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Moderator. For the past few years, the Town Council has presented a supplemental budget at the annual town meeting to close any gaps in spending for the prior fiscal year. We have chosen this method instead of completely relying on the reserve fund because we already have a good idea, or actually an exact idea, of what is needed, and we can save the reserve fund for any items that suddenly occur over the last 2 months of the fiscal year. This year, we had a few items that were unanticipated, but we do have to take care of here. $150,000 for the tree damage from the August 2020 storm. And if anybody remembers that storm, I think the actual cost was around $180,000. We think we're going to be able to handle some of that within the DPW budget, but that was quite a day. And DPW department, particularly forestry under Dennis Fazio, did a great job in getting us opened up much quicker than some of the other communities. $50,000 for the legal fees on the Butler Ave settlement, $60,320 for additional students at the vocational school, and 3 at Essex North. And you may recall in Article 1, we don't actually know who's attending until we get past beginning of the fiscal year. And actually, Minuteman Tech in Lexington charges a $6,000 capital fee, and $43,000 for workers' comp insurance fees as that payroll audit occurred. We've taken care of that in this year's budget coming forward. If for some reason we can cover any of these costs at year end and we look at close out all the departments, we would just not utilize this money, or would utilize this and the excess money would roll back to the general fund. $309,320 is requested under this article.
Mr. Sullivan.
The Finance Committee recommends favorable action.
Any discussion under Article 5? Mr. Watts.
No discussion.
Motion before you that the town appropriate from free cash the sum of $309,320 to carry out the purposes of this article. All in favor? All opposed? Mr. Watts.
Majority 4.
Okay. Motion carries. We've taken care of 6. We've taken care of 7 also, I believe. Is that correct? Yes. We are on to number 8, moving right along on a Saturday morning. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate from tax levy or transfer from available funds a sufficient sum of money for the collection, disposal, recycling, and composting of refuse, or to see what the town will do about it. Mr. Mayo. Oh my God, little Joey Conway. Mr. Conway. He was a former Wakefield Little League Brave, an outstanding cleanup hitter. And now, Mr. Conway, you're up on number 8.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. That the town appropriate from tax levy the sum of $2,199,441 to carry out the purpose of this article.
Is there a second? Mr. Conway.
The Department of Public Works is requesting $2,199,441 for the collection and disposal of refuse, collection and processing of recycling, and operation of the Nahant Street Yard Waste Facility.
Second? You're up, Mr. Conway.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you go now.
So the Department of Public Works is requesting $2,199,441 for the collection and disposal of refuse, collection and processing of recycling, and operation of the yard waste program at the Nahant Street Yard Waste site.
Mr. Sullivan, are you up on this? Okay.
And the Finance Committee recommends favorable action.
Any discussion under Article 8, trash? Mr. Watts?
Discussion.
No discussion. There be no discussion. The motion before you is that the town appropriate from the tax levy the sum of $2,199,441 to carry out the purpose of this article. All in favor? All opposed? Mr. Watts?
Majority 4.
Thank you. All right. We are on to On to 9. Mr. Mayo, you're back up. Let me read you 9. Let me read 9. Joey Conway threw me off. Number 9, see if the town will vote pursuant to General Laws, Chapter 40, Sections 15, 15A, and 15B. See if any other applicable authority to transfer to the town council for the purposes of sale of the real property numbered at 124 Green Street, Stoneham, Mass., including structure, fixtures thereon erected, being the same property conveyed to the town by deed recorded with the Middlesex Registry of Deeds at Book 3072, page 264, consisting of 22,700 square feet, more or less, and pursuant to General Laws, Section 3, Chapter 30B, Section 16, and any other applicable authority to authorize the town council to send, sell, transfer, and convey the said real property, such sale to be on such terms and subject to such conditions as the town council may deem prudent, or to see what the town will do about it. Mr. Mayo.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. That the town vote pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 40, Sections 15, 15A, and 15B, and any other applicable authority to transfer to the town council for the purpose of sale the real property known and numbered as 124 Green Street, Stoneham, Massachusetts, including the structure and fixtures thereon erected, being the same property conveyed to the town by deed recorded with the Middlesex South District Registry of Deeds at Book 3072, page 264, consisting of 22,700 square feet, more or less, and pursuant to General Laws, Mass General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 3, Section 30B, Section 16, and any other applicable authority to authorize the town council to sell, transfer, and convey the said real property, such sale to be on such terms and subject to such conditions as the town council may deem prudent.
Is there a second?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Article 9 will authorize the town of Wakefield to enter an agreement and ultimately sell property owned by the town of Wakefield located at 124 Green Street in Stoneham. This property, many years ago, before my time, was utilized by Wakefield for a water tower, and a standpipe and water tower, and it is no longer necessary for the purposes of the town. There's a little picture there you can see. So the property contains about 22,700 square feet. It is currently vacant. There may be some remnants of the structure on there, the foundation or something, but it's no longer viable. And the property is zoned as Residence A, so it's residential property in Stoneham. So the way that this works is it's a very kind of long process, is the town council had to authorize the advertisement of the property for sale. And this is actually the third time we tried, third time being a charm. The first two times we got no bids on the property. But we had much more cooperation with the town of Stoneham. In fact, they were pushing us to do it because some members of their board of selectmen, or select board, I should say, wanted it on the tax levy for them. Advertisement was placed in the Massachusetts Central Register as required on February 24th. We kind of wanted to get by the holiday season. And we also placed advertisement in the Wakefield Item and Boston Herald. It was very cheap. Bids were accepted through April 7th, 2021, and we actually received 4 bids. We had a bid opening ceremony, and these bids ranged from $169,000 to $261,000. So the finance, I recommended to the town council, they agreed, and the finance committee will also recommend the sale of that for $261,000. Why are we here at town meeting? Because town-owned property needs a 2/3 vote of town meeting to authorize a sale. And it goes back to the town council to negotiate and sell the property for the $261,000 that was the high bid. It is an as-is sale. We're doing nothing where Tom Mullen will show up with a deed and we'll get $261,000, and that $261,000 will go into our general fund to be used at future town meetings as this body decides. So this is the third time we've gone around this, and we do highly recommend that we sell this asset. It's doing nothing for us right now, and maybe it'll be someone's home in Stoneham to come. Thank you.
Mr. Sullivan.
The Finance Committee recommends favorable action.
Any discussion on the motion under Article, where are we? 10. No, 9, sorry. Mr. Watts.
No discussion.
Okay. The motion before you, now this requires a 2/3 vote as explained by Mr. Mullins because we're negotiating property that the town owns. The motion before you as read in by Mr. Mayo. All in favor? All opposed? Mr. Watts?
Unanimous out here, 4.
Okay. Is anybody opposed here? I should check. No one? Okay, Mr. Mullen, that carries unanimously. Okay, and it's good enough that Mr. Mayo read the motion in, right? I read the full article, he read the full motion? Okay, when it's 2/3, there has to be a record because that can be sometimes checked, so. All right. We are on to Article 10. To see if the town will vote to amend Chapter 143 of the general bylaws entitled Fingerprint-Based Criminal Background Records Check by striking from Section 143-2A entitled Applicability Notification of Applicant, Section 5, Dealers in Junk, Secondhand Articles and Antiques, Section 6, Secondhand Motor Vehicle Dealer, Section 7, Hackney Carriage, Taxi Operator, and delete Section 8 and renumbering Ice Cream Vendor as Section 5, or to see what the town will do about it. Mr. Mayo. Oh, I thought Steve was going to read the motion. That's what it says on my program. Chief, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Article 10, fingerprinting bylaw, that the town vote to amend Chapter 143 of the general bylaws as described to carry out the purpose of this article.
Is there a second? Chief Scory, you're up.
Thank you. Chapter 143 of the town bylaws is titled Fingerprint-Based Criminal Record Background Checks. The bylaw requires that applicants for certain town licenses that permit specific occupational activities within the town must submit to fingerprinting by the Wakefield Police Department. The police department uses the fingerprints to conduct a state and national criminal record background check, and the town then considers the results of such background checks in determining whether or not to grant a license. Section 2 of the bylaw lists 8 specific occupations for fingerprinting. Number 1, hawkers and peddlers. Number 2, liquor licensees. Number 3, managers or alternate managers of liquor licensees. Number 4, solicitors and canvassers. Number 5, dealers in junk, secondhand articles, and antiques. Number 6, secondhand motor vehicle dealers. Number 7, hackney carriage taxi operators. And number 8, ice cream truck vendors. We are seeking to amend Section 2 by eliminating numbers 5, 6, and 7, and moving ice cream truck vendors from number 8 to number 5. The police department would continue to do fingerprint background checks to determine the suitability of applicants for hawkers and peddlers, liquor licenses, managers of liquor licensees, solicitors and canvassers, and ice cream truck vendors. We request to amend this bylaw because much has changed since it was originally implemented, and it no longer effectively applies to certain occupations. For instance, with dealers in junk, secondhand articles, and antiques, internet marketplaces such as Craigslist and Facebook have become popular ways for people to sell secondhand goods without having a brick-and-mortar shop. For those with brick-and-mortar shops, Mass General Laws, Chapter 140, Section 73, allows the police department to view all records, inventory, and all articles taken in pawn or stored on the premises. Shop owners must hold merchandise for a certain period of time before being able to sell, and requires customers to provide photo ID. This law provides for better oversight than the fingerprinting of a single individual from the business. With secondhand motor vehicle dealers, again, Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, and other similar websites have become popular ways to sell used cars without the need for a brick-and-mortar shop. For those with brick-and-mortar shops, Mass General Laws, Chapter 140, Section 66, allows the police to examine all secondhand motor vehicles, vehicle parts, inventory, and records. This law provides for better oversight than the fingerprinting of a single individual from the business. Number 7, with hackney carriage taxi operators. The taxi industry has been taken over by Uber, Lyft, and other ride-sharing systems. Those drivers go through a background check conducted by the ride-sharing company. Our bylaw only requires the owner of a taxi service to be printed, not the drivers. Each fingerprint background check requires multiple layers at the police department. We have streamlined the process as much as possible, but each application takes in excess of 1 hour to process. The elimination of this requirement for certain license applications would free up time to be spent on other required tasks, such as firearms licensing, public records requests, sex offender registrations, lobby inquiries, court discovery requests, and evidence processing. Thank you.
Discussion? Mr. Watts?
No discussion.
No discussion. Motion before you, under Article 10, that the town vote to amend Chapter 143 of the general bylaws as described in the motion. All in favor? All opposed? Mr. Watts?
Majority 4.
Motion carries. We are on to 11. Article 11. Ooh, Mr. Assessor. Article 11, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate from the tax levy or transfer from available funds a sum of money for professional services to assist the fiscal year 2022 reevaluation of properties within the town, or see what the town will do about it. Mr. Assessor.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. That the town appropriate from tax levy the sum of $38,000 to carry out the purpose of this article.
Second. Thank you. Mr. Assessor, you may proceed.
This article is every 5 years we have a state mandated audit of all assessing functions in our office, and these funds are used to bring in an outside vendor to assist us with the necessary details towards the completion of our state audit.
What do you say? You all set?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan.
The Finance Committee recommends favorable action.
Any discussion on the motion under Article 11? Mr. Watts?
No discussion.
Being no discussion, the motion before you is that the town appropriate from the tax levy the sum of $38,000 to carry out the purpose of this article. All in favor? All opposed? Mr. Watts?
Majority 4.
Thank you. Number 12. A lot of stuff up here this morning. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate from the tax levy or transfer from available funds a sum of money for professional services to assist in the revaluation of all locally assessed personal property within the town, or to see what the town will do about it. Mr. Assessor.
That the town appropriate from tax levy the sum of $45,000 to carry out the purpose of this article.
Is there a second? Mr. Santiello.
This article specifically relates to business personal property. Once every 10 years, we do a complete inspection and detailed audit of all business personal property in the town. And a new requirement by the Department of Revenue this year is for independent appraisals on utility companies. And again, we have a vendor that comes in and assists us, and this is another necessary step in maintaining state certification for our upcoming audit. Thank you.
Mr. Sullivan.
The Finance Committee recommends favorable action.
Any discussion on the motion under Article 12? Mr. Watts.
One coming to the microphone.
Okay. Victor, you might want to handle this.
Can you hear me? All right. John Locke, Gregory Road.
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Great. As an owner of personal property in Wakefield, I'm wondering to what advantage it is of me to fund additional administration for a revaluation of personal property.
So let me get this straight. Are you making a motion?
No, I'm asking a question during discussion.
Okay, can you repeat it again? That was much better the second time you started to talk. Go ahead.
Oh, my apologies. Okay. As an owner of personal property in Wakefield, I'm wondering what advantage it is of mine to fund administration for the revaluation of personal property. I.e., will my tax levy likely go up or stay the same or go down?
Do you understand the question? Okay. Victor.
Sure, it's in everyone's best interest as it relates to personal property. Every year, my department sends out what's called a formal list to every business. That formal list requests a detailed accounting of your business assets that may be subject to taxation. We update our information annually based on what's submitted by local business owners. And every year, we check about 100 to 150 accounts to make sure that their listings are correct. And once every 10 years, we're required by the Department of Revenue to view every business account in our community. We're not trying to seek to raise additional revenue. We're just trying to maintain an accurate accounting of business personal property for the purposes of taxation and to complete the requirements of the State Department of Revenue.
Okay, because the article says that you are seeking to assist in the revaluation of all locally assessed personal property within the town.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Mr. Watts?
No one out here.
Okay. Can you put together a task force and go stop that alarm? Never mind. Okay, there being no further discussion, the motion before you under Article 12 is that the town appropriate from the tax levy a sum of $45,000 to carry out the purpose of this article. All in favor? All opposed? Mr. Watts?
Majority 4.
Okay, motion carries. A lot shorter than Reading, huh, Victor? He's been there 6 nights, 4 nights ago, not 6, yeah, sorry. Article 13, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate from the tax levy or transfer from available funds a sufficient sum of money to supplement the school department budget for the period of July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021 to provide for the payment of special education costs or to see what the town will do about it. Mr. Lyons.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. That the town supplement the school department budget for the period of July 1, 2020 to June 30th, 2021 by transferring the sum of $230,000 from the Special Education Stabilization Account created under Article 7 of the 2014 Annual Town Meeting warrant to carry out for the purposes of this article.
Mr. Lyons.
The stabilization fund, the access of this fund this year is to fund COVID-related costs for special education that include out-of-district placements and COVID-related compensatory services.
Mr. Sullivan.
The Finance Committee recommends favorable action.
So apparently Mr. Watts's unit was unable to destroy that vehicle. Does anybody have a gray Jeep? It's a gray Jeep.
Mr. Moderator, we have someone who wants to bring up, never mind.
Okay. I just want to point out, it's a gray Jeep we're looking, the owner of a gray Jeep is beeping out there. That's what the police officer wanted me to know.
The request is to do the presentation again.
Okay, because of the alarm. Because of the alarm?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Doug, can you run that by us again? Thank you. It's easier. It's easier than getting into a procedural argument. Okay, Superintendent Lyons, now that it's quiet outside, would you be so gracious as to repeat your presentation? Thank you.
I certainly will. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. That the town supplement the school department budget for the period of July 1, 2020 to June 30th, 2021 by transferring the sum of $230,000 from the Special Education Stabilization Account created under Article 7 of the 2014 Annual Town Meeting warrant to carry out for the purpose of this article.
Is there a second? Mr. Lyons.
We are accessing the stabilization account this year for COVID-related expenses for out-of-district placements for special education and COVID-related compensatory services.
Mr. Sullivan.
The Finance Committee recommends favorable action.
Is there any discussion under Article 13? Mr. Watts.
No discussion.
No discussion. This requires a 2/3 vote. I need to read the motion. That the town supplement the school department budget for the period of July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021 by transferring the sum of $230,000 from the Special Education Stabilization Account created under Article 7 of the 2014 Annual Town Meeting warrant to carry out the purposes of this article. All in favor? Is anyone opposed? Count out there, Mr. Watts?
No one opposed out here.
All right. Mr. Mullen, unanimous? Thank you. All right. Article 14. I won't fool around. Stretch code bylaw. Julie Galvin Smith. Okay. I'm not going to read Article 15. It's in your program here, and it doesn't require 2/3. So, Julie, you're up. You can read your motion. Where you been? You're up.
Good, okay. Thank you. That the town vote to enact as Chapter 180 of the general bylaws of the town provisions for the purpose of regulating the design and construction of buildings for the effective use of energy pursuant to Appendix 115.AA of the Massachusetts State Building Code, 780 CMR, the Stretch Energy Code, including future additions, amendments, or modifications thereto, as stated in the recommendation book.
Is there a second? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. First, I want to give some context for why this is coming to town meeting. This is part of a larger goal that the Environmental Sustainability Committee, with the support of the Town Council, has set for the town, essentially to achieve the designation of a green community. And in doing so, we not only would get that designation, but we would also receive access to annual grants that would assist us across the municipal building and fleet to lower our energy consumption. Essentially, to achieve the Green Communities Act, we have to meet 5 criteria. The first 2 have to do with renewable energy siting and permitting, and those are already established within our existing rules, zoning, and bylaws, so there's no action needed there. We need to create an energy reduction plan to reduce our energy use by 20% over the next 5 years, and we have a subcommittee that is actively working on that. We would have to adopt a fuel-efficient vehicle purchase policy, which we can do at the town council level. And the 5th one is to minimize the life cycle costs in new constructions. And essentially the way that that is achieved across the state is by adopting the stretch code, which needs to be done at town meeting. So I hope that gives some context. In terms of what we get for becoming a green community, and it would be a process that we would apply to in the fall once we've met all these criteria. It's an annual process, which is why we really wanted to get this done at town meeting now. Right off the bat, we would get $170,000 in what's called the designation grant amount, and we can use that for a variety of items, including, as I counted, about 8 things that we just passed in our capital budget. It would help to fund things like boilers, HVAC, conservation, energy conservation efforts, weatherization, lighting, and the like. So we would have full discretion over how we use that $170,000 within the energy conservation realm. And then each year we would be able to apply for up to $200,000 in additional funding for similar items. And we are actually behind the curve on this. About 280 communities are already designated green communities in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. That's about 80%. And so what we're doing here is not pioneering. It's really been done across the state. We're actually late to the game on this. And so that will have relevance because that means that those 280 communities, in fact 288, have already passed the stretch code. And so the builders and the process is a very well-known one within the state. So focusing on the stretch code, which is what we're here to talk about today, this is to minimize the life cycle costs. Essentially, the criteria is that all new, and I emphasize new, residential construction and all new commercial and industrial real estate would need to minimize, to the extent feasible, the life cycle costs of the facility by utilizing energy efficiency, water conservation, and other renewable or alternative energy technologies. And the way this is done is by adopting the stretch code. So let me walk through what that stretch code actually is. Again, I want to emphasize that this is only new residential construction, new commercial construction, you can see there over 100,000 square feet, or over 40,000 square feet for conditioned spaces like labs and supermarkets. It is not, and I repeat, it is not things like additions to your homes, renovations, or repairs. Those are exempt from the energy code. So when you look at the difference between the stretch code and what we have right now, we have a base code. And the base code allows for 2 options for all residential and commercial new construction. Essentially, there's a prescriptive option where you have a checklist. You have to still comply, but it's simply a checklist. You check the list, and there are inspections during and post-construction. And then you can also, you could select a performance way to address the issues, and that would be more pre and post-construction and inspections and modeling. And so what the stretch code does is essentially gets rid of the prescriptive options. So the only option that developers of new commercial or residential would have would be this performance option. And so why is that important? That is important because the prescriptive, being just a checklist, doesn't go back and really guarantee that there has been good installation of things like insulation, air and water tightness, and whatnot. And so there can be a lot of leakage from these new buildings. And the way that this is essentially executed is through what's called a HERS rating, which is a home energy rating system. And it's probably hard to see, but there's an index, and probably most of the houses we're living in now are up around in the red area there, 150 to 140. A standard new home would get a rating of about 100, and this would require the new construction in our town to reach a rating of 55, which means it would really be the most energy conservation that it can be. And what this means practically is that building plans are reviewed using computer energy modeling. There are inspections, a first inspection that tests things like duct tightness, a second inspection that can be done together with the first one that looks at items like insulation, and then finally a blower test that is a final inspection. And so these buildings, in actuality, are the tightest, most energy efficient that they can be. And then there's a finalized energy model, and the HERS rating is actually entered into a state database, and the Department of Energy Resources, in designating us and renewing our green communities, would check that on a regular basis. So that's essentially all I have. You can see there, that's a map of actually everybody who already has the stretch code, and I can just tell you anecdotally, and I'm sure others here can as well, that in the construction industry, given that so many towns and cities are already doing this, we don't believe that it would be a big burden on our local contractors or developers. But we're open to discussion. I just want to say that we have resources here. Our building inspector is here, members of our Environmental Sustainability Committee, and we're happy to take any discussion. Mr. Moderator?
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion under Article 14? Yeah, he's going.
Good morning. Bill Spalding, excuse me. Bill Spalding, 42 Gould Street. I'm on the town's planning board, but I'm not speaking for the planning board. But I do recommend the stretch code for Wakefield. I do have a question. With the computer modeling, who in the town is doing that, or is our town doing that? And are we equipped to do that?
Can you answer that?
I'm gonna have Ben come up and talk about the process, or he can do it from there.
Okay. Okay, Ben, you need to identify yourself.
Benjamin D. Cristoforo, building inspector. So basically, who does the modeling is a HERS rater. They're certified by the state, who comes in and does all the processes, basically those 3 inspections. And the last one, or the technical one, is the blower door test, which is performed under his guidance.
So over the last 2 weeks since our last planning board meeting, there's a lot of resources for this online, and I'm learning a lot more about how this is different than HERS, and I really appreciate that the town has taken this initiative, and again, I'd like to recommend that we do pass this. Thank you.
Doug Butler, 220 Main Street. Just a couple of questions in terms of adding building cost for implementing this, as well as thinking about how many, are there more inspections under this new framework, and are we equipped to do that?
Julie.
So let me just be clear that I understand. So you're asking about additional costs?
Right, both additional costs for building, you had that in your earlier slideshow, but it seems like that I didn't make it here.
Ben, do you want to talk about it? And I can show some of the, I have some cost analysis as well, but if you want to.
The Benjamin DeCristoforo, building inspector. The costs vary. The rough estimate is around $2,000 to $3,000 per new construction of a average single-family home.
So I don't know if WCAT can put the slides back on. There we go. So this is a base model, but for about a 2,500 square foot, 3-bedroom, single-family home. Actually, that's with natural gas, right, which is more likely what we would have here. The additional cost is about $2,216, which adds $221 to a down payment, $176 to a mortgage, saves about $182 a year, so you would be net positive by your second year. So it's a relatively small amount to add on to a mortgage or a down payment, and then in all the out years, you would be positive in terms of cash flow. If you use an electric heat pump, you actually are net positive in the first year. And I think there may be some people from the light department here, we're actually not doing new natural gas hookups. It's difficult to do natural gas hookups in Wakefield because of the constraints that we have. And so it's much more likely that new construction would use electric heat pumps and have a cash positive effect in year one.
Sure. I get that, the direct cost. I guess my question, and this was more for Mr. Christopher, the level of inspection, it sounded like it went way up, but is it, or are we doing all those things now and it's just making it to a different standard?
Ben.
Benjamin DeCristoforo. So basically you have a HERS rater who controls it. It's under his guidance. So you have a more controlled inspection by you can call him a more specific, like he's the energy engineer. So he controls the inspections. And he certifies that the building is built according to the stretch code standards.
That's currently in.
No, if we adopt the stretch energy code. So right now, the process is we're under the International Energy Code. That's the 2018 International Energy Code. I am the one that goes in and sees the prescriptive, the insulation, to make sure the insulation is done correctly. But under the stretch energy code, we would now have the HERS rater who goes in and performs all those inspections and certifies to the town that they are done correctly. Through mechanical means, through the blower door test, and through his modeling, his pre-engineering, and his visual inspections as well, then finally with the mechanical blower door test.
All set? You all set, Mr. Butler? Okay. Any further discussion under Article 14? Gotcha. I'm just going to check outside while you're moving. Mr. Watt, anybody outside?
No one.
Okay.
Myra Sessions, 40 Richardson Street.
Pardon me?
Can I take my mask down?
Pardon?
I'm Myra Sessions, 40 Richardson Street.
Oh, okay, thanks.
I am a member of the Environmental Sustainability Committee. I know very little when I first started this conversation about what the stretch code was, but I'd like to speak in strong support of it. Can you understand me? Can you hear me?
No. You got to speak up a little louder.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm Myra Sessions. I'm 40 Richardson Street. I'm a member of the Environmental Sustainability Committee, and I knew very little about stretch code when we first started discussing it, but now I'm in strong support. I feel like the green community's opportunity is too good to pass up. That grant funding could fund a lot of the initiatives that we're already working on, and a lot of things that we would like to do in our community. And I feel like we talk about building smarter here in Wakefield. We've been talking a lot about development, and I feel like it's a small investment to make sure that our buildings are built as smart as possible and really perform as the buildings are expected to. So I encourage a yes vote on stretch code.
Mr. Watts?
No one discussing.
Okay. There being no further discussion, this is not 2/3, is it? No. Okay, next one. All right, that the town vote to enact Chapter 180 of the general bylaws of the town provisions for the purpose of regulating the design, construction of buildings for the effective use of energy pursuant to Appendix 115.AA of the Massachusetts State Building Code 780 CMR, the Stretch Energy Code, including future additions, amendments, or notifications therein as stated in the recommendation book. All in favor? All opposed? Mr. Watts?
Clear majority for.
Okay. We are on to number 15.
Mr. Moderator, before we go to number 15, I'd just like to make an announcement. Vision 2030, which a lot of you, I'm sure, have seen on the town website or in the newspapers or been talking with your friends, please visit that page on our website, as we would like to have where you can make input. We do have a survey. We'd love that to have completed so we can actually take those into consideration. And please join us for our next Vision 2030 webinar or seminar, actually a charrette. It's an online charrette where you do get a chance to make comments and we take notes and everything. And that's on June 21st, so in the evening. So please take a look at that. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Welcome. Mr. Watts, at the end of this meeting, I want your unit to secure the roadway, and I'm going to have our troops run up and secure Landon Field, okay? It's walkie-talkies. Didn't you play as kids? Come on. No idea what he said. I feel like I'm a general or something. Sergeant Watts. All right, where are we? Article 15, which is 2/3, folks, previewing. Article 15, to see if the town will vote to authorize the town council pursuant to general laws, Chapter 40, Sections 14 and 15, and any other applicable authority to relocate and or reconfigure drainage easements and or other municipal easements on the property known and numbered as 123 Pleasant Street, Wakefield, Massachusetts, including without limitation, abandonment of portions of such easements in consideration of the acquisition or replacement of the easements on the same lot, or to see what the town will do about it. Mr. Mayo.
That the town vote to authorize the town council pursuant to general laws, Chapter 40, Section 14 and 15, and any other applicable authority to relocate and or reconfigure drainage easements and or other municipal easements on the property known and numbered as 123 Pleasant Street, Wakefield, Massachusetts, including without limitation the abandonment of portions of such easements in consideration of the acquisition of replacement easements on the same lot.
Second? Discussion, Mr. Mayo, sorry.
Thank you, and you do have a kind of a sketch or a plan of what this is all about up here. I hope you can see it. Every now and then, we as a body have the opportunity to enact what I would characterize as good government, even if, as in this case, the good government benefits a specific individual. In this instance, the town back in 1961 ordered that a permanent drainage easement be taken over a number of properties stretching from Pleasant Street to Main Street. Unfortunately, and for whatever reason, a portion of that easement, as shown on a recent survey, runs through a portion of the foundation of a property at 123 Pleasant Street. And if you see the black hash there, that goes right through a portion of the property. As you can imagine, that situation is problematic for the owner in the sale of the property. This article allows the town council to relocate the easement so it no longer passes under the home's foundation. And if you notice, that's the area in red. It kind of shifts over a little bit to the left there on your screen. Our DPW department has reviewed this request, and in a letter to me states in part, the Department of Public Works is supportive of the proposed relocation and does not have any opposition to this easement relocation. This relocation in no way hinders the town or the function of the easement. It costs the town no money and helps out a citizen. Like I said, good government.
Any discussion under Article 15? Mr. Watts?
No discussion.
Okay. This is 2/3, so I'm going to read it again. That the town vote to authorize the town council pursuant to general laws, Chapter 40, Sections 14 and 15, and any other applicable authority to relocate it and/or reconfigure drainage easements and any other municipal easements on the property known and numbered as 123 Pleasant Street, Wakefield, including without limitation the abandonment of portions of such easements in consideration of the acquisition or replacement and the easements on same lot. All in favor? All opposed? Anyone opposed? Anyone opposed out there?
No opposition.
All right, motion carries. Before I entertain a motion to dissolve, I would like to thank David Watts. We'll move him up to captain for running that out there. It can't be easy, although last time he got a sunburn. Today it was just a little chilly. I'd like to thank the school department and more importantly, more importantly, the DPW. This is not an easy task to set up. It's just amazing. I mean, think about this. This is like, talk about Army. The logistics of this, to set up the whole outside, to come up with all the screens and microphones and all that. And as always, WCAT. I mean, these guys probably got here at 5 o'clock this morning. You know, screens, microphones, and the cool, how about that cool picture and screen thing, huh? I like that. That's a new feature. I like that, guys. It's cool. And so I really can't thank these guys enough. I thank Steve for putting this all together, but then everybody thinks I'd be sucking up to him. So anyway, I will entertain, you're close. Okay, good. All right.
I move to dissolve this town meeting and would echo Mr. Moderator's thanks on behalf of the town council for police, fire, DPW, and WCAT. Have a great and safe weekend.
Second. And any discussion? There being no discussion, all in favor? Did you say, oh, geez? She can't get out of here fast enough. All in favor? All opposed? Mr. Watts?
All in favor.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, folks. Great. Thank you.